This is a really good session today. We've got some really special guests. I've been waiting a long time to get these guys on. I'm not going to waste any more time, and I'm going to introduce them straight away. I've got Chris and Luke from LMS. These guys are based down on the South Coast. I've been working with them for quite a few years now, watching their journey from being a small MSP to really getting some traction now, both across the board with all their products and services, and also with MailStore. So hopefully they'll have plenty of good nuggets of wisdom to share with you. So I'll bring the guys in now. Hopefully everything goes according to plan on that front. Hello, Luke. Hello, Chris. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes,
Hello.
We can. Loud and clear.
Very good. Well done. How are things? How are things over there?
Yeah, good. Whilst I was waiting, a small child came in and asked for a cookie. I had to put them away. No, I'm joking. Yeah, no, fine. All very well.
Excellent, excellent. And so, do you mind doing a quick introduction then? Let the guys know who you are and what you're about. I'll go into the about SPE for those of you who are new to it, but just to get us started, maybe tell us a bit about yourselves.
Sure. Yeah. I'll kick off. Guys, hi, I'm Luke. I'm the CEO. And as James said, we've been working with MailStore for some time. And hopefully today we can give you a bit of insight into our journey, how we started off predominantly selling on-premise MailStore, and actually have made that shift over to SPE for our clients. So it's my role within the business to head up really our journey and our development. Chris, my colleague who's with us today, is head of technical. Chris, over to yourself.
My name's Chris. I work for LMS Group. I've been here for about 3 years now. MailStore was completely foreign to me. Email archiving I was aware of. Luke came to me one day, Chris, check this product out. Oh my God, it's amazing. We're going to sell loads of it. And to be honest, didn't believe him at the time. Thought it was exceptionally difficult. About 3 days later, he had convinced me. We made the shift from on-prem over to SPE, and I've got to admit, I'm generally the guy responsible for setting up new clients, doing the searches, answering kind of the technical questions, and it's a great product. It's really good to work with, and I think a lot of our clients really find huge value in it.
So, Chris, I'm actually going to share something now that I've not told you yet, and James, you'll like this. We're pitching to a client at the minute. They're a national retailer here in the UK. They've got 20 sites, and I went to see them on site last Friday. Now, one of the things, the way we sell MailStore and the way we pitch it to our clients is it's there on any proposal, and it's optional but enabled. It's down to them to take it off. Now, one of the things that the finance director was like, wow, this is a cost that we've never had before. What's the value in it? Why do I need it? When I went to see them last week, I met the MD of this company who came in and goes, massive headache. I sent a load of emails to landlords to review rents and get a better deal with the whole COVID situation. I've lost all those emails. And there it was. There's your value in MailStore. So, yeah, it's a little nugget for you.
That's a lovely one, yeah. And it's actually it's this kind of story actually was why I was so keen to get you guys on, because you seem to have loads of them, loads of different scenarios that are really good to share. So I am going to definitely grill you for those in a little bit. Get some more of those. That's a great one, Luke. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so just quickly, just for those of you, I know we're working with our distribution partners, and so we've got MSPs, IT support companies at all different levels. So some of you may not be familiar at all with SPE. So just to give you a 1-minute introduction before we carry on with the chat, and I want this to be more about chatting to the LMS guys than me, certainly talking about the product specifically. But just so you know what the Service Provider Edition is. It's a version of the software, so it's just the software, and it's where you provide the hosting. So it's not necessarily the right fit for everyone. It needs to be you need to have either your own hosting infrastructure or access to it, or at least have the resources available to run a hosting infrastructure. So if you're a one-man band, might make sense, but possibly not. It's one of those things that's worth thinking about in more detail. There's a minimum of 50 users to get going, but one of the key differences between this and the server product is that it's priced per user per month. So it fits in with your recurring models. Just so you know, so you've seen it. I'll let Chris go into some of the white label options. I think he's got a bit on that to talk to you about. But just so you've actually seen it, essentially what you're looking at there, the screenshot of the rear, that's the management interface. So what it is, you've basically got a management interface that controls multiple instances. So you provision an instance of MailStore for each of your customers. So each one of your customers is going to get effectively what is a MailStore installation with their own administration console, but they get exactly the same experience as if they were using MailStore on site, essentially. So that's one of the key differences between maybe this and a straightforward sort of SaaS solution. So that's the whistle stop tour, and I think I'll get straight back to the guys. So obviously there's still quite a lot of confusion, I find, when I talk to MSPs at the moment around why archiving. I've got backup. Why would I need to worry about an archiving solution? So I'm kind of keen. What are your reasons? I'm keen to know. Why isn't backup enough for you guys? Why is it you need email archiving for your clients?
I think that is the perfect intro, Chris, as to a couple of examples, because the only way to describe the real value in email archiving is when you need it. So, Chris, over to you.
Oh, there's so many. Okay, so to answer your main question first, James, because I will definitely go off on a tangent on this.
That's fine. You do that. That's okay.
So it's not a backup. That's the thing. I've got 2 or 3 different backup products, and I've got a differential to a NAS, and I've got an offsite to a cloud, and I've got a retention period on one of 30 days, and I've got another one on 7 days. And there's on-site VSS copies of file servers and stuff, and someone raises a support ticket. I've deleted some files, can you restore them? Yeah, cool. Someone raises a support ticket. I've just deleted some emails, can I get them back? Without archiving? Maybe. Yeah, I'll just check your deleted items, and I'll check the recovery section in that deleted items.
Yeah.
And there is a level of information I can get back, and it depends on how long that is as well. But it's not a backup, it is an archive. I mean, it's indefinite as well. The way we set it out, it journals everything in, it journals everything out, and it takes a full snapshot of everyone's mailbox. So to give you guys a real life example, we had a customer who had some really strange mail flow rules on their Office 365 tenant. Now, they've been a client of ours for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, and it's just suddenly never come up. We've never had a reason to look in those mailflow rules. And, the MD found they were there. Oh, who asked them to be put there? They're not doing anything dodgy. There's nothing untoward going on, but there wasn't an answer to why those rules were there. Exchange itself didn't tell us when they were created, who they were created by. The auditing in 365 didn't go back that far. So, the question was, well, why are they there? Who requested that they be put there?
So what is it? That's a copy then, is it? So you got a Exchange deployment making a copy of mail and putting it somewhere else.
So what it was, because the search is so advanced, they've got MailStore archiving into their archive. Do a quick little very fuzzy search, just using one of the terms that was in that particular mailflow rule, and it brought back, I don't know, a couple of hundred results. Wasn't that many on emails that had happened between people within the company. And I found an email from one of the contacts of the company requesting a support ticket into our service desk, asking for that to be set up. So within, I don't know, 7 to 12 minutes, I'd got back to the MD and I said, this is the person that asked the rule to be created, and they've done so because this person within your company asked for that to happen. So there'll be no other way of determining that information without that email archiving solution right there. But there's so many other instances. We had one where there was what industry are they in? Architecture. And they had a deal that was a couple of £1 million, and a customer that I worked with a few years ago, and there was a lot of data, a lot of drawings, a lot of attachments, and the account manager had unfortunately left the company. And the client got back to our client and said, oh, we need this, we need these drawings, or we need this information, or we need to, more specifically, actually, it was, we need to see the legal agreement that we signed, because we don't have a copy, but you should, because you provided us with this architectural information. Tick it to our service desk. Our guys, kind of bat it around a little bit, bring it to my attention. Have they got archiving? Yes. Okay, perfect. Quick fuzzy search on the person that used to exist.
Yeah.
Obviously, the mailbox has been long deleted in 365. There's no way they can find it on their file server. They don't even know what they're looking for.
And this stuff just lives in mailboxes, right? That's often the only copy that you have.
You'll be so surprised the amount of things that live in clients' mailboxes.
Yeah. So quick search, again, relatively fuzzy, start to narrow it down a little bit. All of a sudden, about 20 or 30 emails from however long ago, exported all of them, zipped them up, sent it over to the client, boom, got all the emails, got all the attachments, got all the evidence, and they won. The success story is, of course, that they won a new deal with their old client for a new architectural design. So, a very...
Because they're able to get their hands on that data quickly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you say quickly, yeah, literally 10 or 15 minutes of digging, and this client is obviously over the moon that information exists. Another good example as well in regards to why isn't it a backup? So we had another client, they're a manufacturing client, and one of their sales reps worked on referrals. So they were incentivized with money for referrals, and what they were doing was they were creating fictitious email addresses, and they were prompting leads, and then when this lead got to a particular maturity, they would get money. And
right, yeah,
it's a tricky way of operating it, but this person had figured out a way to loop this system. Was just creating loads of Gmail addresses, Hotmail addresses, and whatever, and just contacting all their friends and family, just like, hey, email me, and I'll progress this lead with you. And then eventually they just got loads of commission. And an internal investigation was launched without this person's knowledge, and their managing director, their line manager, contacting us and saying, we think this person's doing something really dodgy. How can we prove it? And I said, well, give us the name of the person. Let's look in their archive. Let's see what's going on. Let's look at all the journaling stuff. And as soon as this person found out about this investigation, on them, they did what most people naturally tend to do, which is panic and instantly delete everything.
Delete, yeah.
Delete your inbox, delete your sent items, empty your deleted items. And their line manager, via 365, had access to the mailbox and could see this stuff existing and then not existing. And then they were worried, they're losing all this information. And not just them trying to cover their tracks, but also actual legitimate leads as well, that they're just select all delete, right? They're not being sensitive about it. It's just get rid of everything.
So they're losing business as well as being exposed to risk. Yeah,
exactly. So MailStore, with the journaling in and out and all the archiving, we could do a couple of different things. So we could instantly restore everything in the mailbox. So all of the legitimate leads that did exist, they've now got information about, and they can get somebody else to follow that up. But it was also evidence to prove that this person had been creating these fictitious emails, because the communication between them was kind of non-existent, and also evidence that they'd also tried to cover the tracks. So from I need to investigate you as an employee because you've kind of gone against our T's and C's and your contract, all that sort of stuff. It's a very clear-cut case of, here is a boatload of evidence that kind of backs up the company's case. So
that really confirms it, doesn't it? Once if you're suspicious and then you spot that mail's been deleted, then that's kind of nailing
it's funny. You can count on more than one hand how many times a client has come to us and says, we need something, can you help? We've gone, yeah, it will all be in your email archiving, and it's resulted in someone getting fired.
Yeah. So, and this is the tangent. Yeah. This is definitely the juiciest story. So there's another customer who the managing director, the company went through a management change, and people were brought in to buy it out, and bits and pieces were chopped and changed. And one of these managing directors was trying to do things they shouldn't be trying to do as a managing director, who they obviously had a very emotional investment in their company, and they didn't want to let certain stuff go. And they were sending emails to people inside and outside the company that they shouldn't have been sending. And it was just, there was lots of very, I don't know the legalities of it, but I would say some of it probably wasn't legal, and there was probably some sort of investigation there as well. But we were able to assist the new owners of the company, of our client, with their investigations. You know, what had they done? How had they done it? And it was, yeah, it was very tentative for a long time, and we had to obviously be very careful with what we were saying. But the information spoke for itself. MailStore, full access, everything journaled in and out. Here is an evidence trail of everything. Here is a timeline of everything that has happened.
I think the key to what Chris has just explained, and actually what the purpose of this call is about around the service provider edition. As a service provider, it's our job to deliver value to our clients. Now, if a client had gone out and picked an email archiving solution off the peg, a lot of the times that email archiving solution belongs to them. Yes, we can help them out in finding emails, but ultimately it's theirs. You flip that. If it's us providing the solution to our client, it's us bolstering that support. It's another value add. And also it allows our clients to, get a bigger amount of love, for a better term. So all of a sudden, when we can deliver to them off the back of a product, i.e. MailStore, their engagement goes up, their satisfaction goes up, and ultimately it drives our recurring revenue as well. So in terms of a product, it's win-win.
That's interesting, because you did actually start doing you were a server reseller, weren't you, before moving to SPE? So you kind of got experience of both, but it's really that you've kind of moved to taking full control. And am I right in saying you don't necessarily, even though we always push the search and it's fantastic, you guys use the search more than maybe the customers do, or is that do you have a mix?
Yeah.
One client, Chris, that's really embedded with it.
Oh yeah, that's one of our first actually. That particular client, the reason they use it so much is so they're in manufacturing and sales, and they a lot of their work is generated from email and website requests, and their mailbox is filled up an awful lot. Now, one of the reasons that we don't use the Office 365 archiving is, well, one, you've got to pay Microsoft an additional license to use the majority of it. Two, the way it sits on your computer is not very nice. It takes up an awful lot of space. But three, the search functionality, it's basically built upon Outlook search, and it's awful. It's not very intuitive. But this particular client, we've set up a particular mailbox rule where it deletes everything older than particular date. So it keeps their mailboxes small. It means they don't have to pay for additional P2 licenses, for example, or 100 gig mailboxes or whatever. And they use it, pretty much all day, every day, because obviously their mailboxes are only 1 year. Everything else is in archiving, and the search is so powerful that if they want to see a particular client that placed a particular order or a particular order number, whose mailboxes it was in, because you've got customer services and sales, and it goes all around the company, doesn't it?
So they search they search across multiple employees with one
search
access. One search. Yeah.
And that for them works really well. So if you imagine they're dealing all day long in really large attachments, and like Chris said, before long they'd be well over that 50 gig limit on Office 365. So we can turn around and deliver them a service that not only costs them less overall, they get a better level of service. And from our point of view, they're more engaged as a client. They're using, as far as they're aware, our email archiving product. So, as a managed services client, they're a lot more sticky.
That's really interesting. How do you see that a lot coming up against? Is that one of the challenges that your customers face a lot? Is the overloaded mailboxes? Because I hear different things about whether or not a big mailbox is an issue in 365. But do you see that 50 gig limit is actually something that you always want to try and avoid, and something you come across regularly?
Not necessarily, but for the clients that have SPE, when we inform them of the ability to do that, 50 gig nowadays is not really an issue. And again, the cost of the P2 to extend it to 100 gig isn't really the problem either. It's more a case of, with 250 SSDs, if you've got an 80 gig, mailbox sitting on your hard drive because you want it snappy and you don't want to use the online only mode, then, you've taken up a lot of your space of your hard drive straight away. So reducing that mailbox size to, its minimum, again, a year. I mean, how often do you deal with stuff that's over a year? You need it, but you don't necessarily need it day to day. So even with if you think about this particular company, they're only about 20 or 30 users. It's not a lot, really. But if you wanted to be able to search across everybody's mailboxes and do lots of shared mailboxes and do loads of permissions, you can, but you're going to spend a lot of time adminning it. And again, the search functionality is not fantastic in Outlook, especially with loads of shared mailboxes, and they're all very large. So by having MailStore there with that search functionality and the ability to strip out all of those emails older than a particular date, it keeps everybody's mailbox really nice and small. It keeps the permissions to a minimum, and it means that you've got maybe a couple of people within the company that have permission to just read information in these mailboxes. They don't even necessarily have access to edit it. They certainly don't have access to delete it. Whereas in a shared mailbox perspective in 365, you don't always have that. Someone accidentally deletes a whole range of emails in the shared mailbox and it's all gone. They don't have the option to do that in MailStore, but they can leverage that search functionality to find the information a lot quicker than they could do in 365.
That's a classic. That's a really good example, and it's funny because when people first look at MailStore, that isn't always the main driver. The access across multiple users, and it's a kind of a nice to have. But actually, it becomes something that probably saves them, an awful lot of time in the long run. Yeah,
what I have found is that trying to sell it to people with these functions and features, and I can do this and it can do this. It falls on a little bit of deaf ears really until they actually need it. And then as soon as you say it can do it, they go, "Oh my God, I wish I knew that." It's like, well, you kind of did because we did tell you, but you don't really see the value.
You'll be so surprised the amount of people that see it as a cost on their P&L, and then 18 months they come back. They really needed it. We've proven they needed it. We get it set up, and then all of a sudden they can't live without it.
Yeah,
so, there's it's just ultimately people are people, and you get. Some clients, and I'm sure people that are joining this call are very aware, every MSP has clients that do not see the value in the IT and the service you're delivering them until they really need it. And that's where SPE comes into its own. I mean, one of the reasons we went back on one of your questions earlier, James, we actually took the shift from selling licensing to our clients and shifting over to SPE. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden we were managing our clients' estates, be it on-premise in Microsoft Azure, and having the email archiving sit client side, all of a sudden with a remote workforce, they were then very much dependent on the internet connection into their setup, into their office. From our point of view, we were then paying for the additional cost to back up the email archiving server off-site, increasing backup times, et cetera, et cetera. So the decision to move away from selling MailStore licensing over to a managed services route actually put a load of ticks in a lot of boxes.
Yeah. Also, I mentioned the start of this. You had a slide, and there was 4 points, and one of them was a minimum 50 user buy-in for SPE.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about this separately. How much of an obstacle that was for you when you looked at that? Because I do speak to MSPs who kind of think, oh well, I haven't quite got 50. I don't know whether to go for it yet or not. So yeah, your take on that would be interesting, actually. Yeah,
I was just thinking because there's going to be people on this call that's if I didn't know SPE, I'd look at that and that would be the thing that put me off, because all the other points they're advantageous apart from that one, which is a crux, isn't it? Whereas actually we just had one client and they hit the 50 pretty much straight off the bat, and that was therefore, if we can get this client to sign up to it, then not only does it cover our costs and it hits that buy-in, that it means that everyone after that is a lot more profitable. So I can understand why the 50 would put people off, but 2 clients at 25, and again, all you've got to do is demonstrate the value into when they will need it, and they will need it. and you know, it sells itself after that.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, even, you know, I've sold the product before to people that were really sitting on the fence and I'm in an R-ing. I said, look, have it for 3 months free, knowing full well they will adopt it. And it's not until they start seeing the value. Yes, it costs us for 3 months, but I know that our profit on the rest of that contract will soon make up for that period. And it sells itself. It's just a case of taking that step and being brave.
That's really interesting. So because you do actually get obviously a 30-day trial anyway, but you go that bit further and add a couple of months on as well because you're that.
I've got that much belief in the product.
That's good. That's good. Excellent stuff. So I have to ask you this. People will be wondering, as a Microsoft Gold partner, obviously I don't want you to trash Microsoft services, but you had a decision to make at some point, which was, shall I go with a third-party SaaS solution, which is what a lot of people will do, certainly the smaller MSPs, or do I use the Microsoft built-in archiving features? What was your decision? What was your chat around that, and how did you end up with MailStore?
The biggest driver in that decision-making process was, at the time, we actually used MailStore ourselves. And the penny dropped when I went out to see a client and I said, oh, you could really do with email archiving. They said, what's that? And I logged into our own environment and showed them around our email archiving product, and I knew it inside out, back to front. Now, I've never, you know, myself, hand on heart, I've never touched the Microsoft email archiving solution. Mm-hmm. And where I was showing them around our internal product, i.e. MailStore on premise, that just kind of was an epiphany. It was like, look, we'll just stick with this. It's working.
So to add more to that, actually, there was a situation in the past where we did actually use both, although maybe not necessarily known to you, Luke. We had a couple of customers that did use the 365 archiving solution, and it existed on their tenant before we took it over. We just kind of inherited the problems. So, for example, the two MDs had it. They had the additional licensing, and no one else in the company had it. And I think I think we'd already sold them MailStore, not knowing they had the 365 archiving. And then I was talking to one of the MDs, and he was talking about his archive, and I was obviously talking about their SPE. I was talking about their LMS email archiving, but he wasn't. He was talking about his Office 365 archiving. And then he was talking about one of the employees that had left, and he wanted to get the data back from the Office 365 email archive, which they didn't have a license for. Okay. And even if they did have the license for, the second you deleted the user, it was all gone. So luckily, we had already sold them SPE. And then once we'd discovered that, we then did all the lifting and shifting from the Office 365 archiving over to our archiving, saving them the archiving money they're already paying. But we still had the ability to recover all their data because it's in our self-hosted solution, as opposed to this user's left, delete user, all data's gone. There was also, before we sold email archiving, we were on another platform, which was that kind of SaaS solution. It's kind of provided by a third party on the back of like an email spam filtering product.
Okay, yeah.
It was all right. It had its uses. It had functionality.
I think you're stretching it all right.
The main, it provided functionality, but it wasn't anywhere near as powerful, and actually the profit on SPE was more. But also it wasn't, I'm going to say this right, white labelable.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Thank you. So whenever our customers had to check their archive, they'd be going to a solution and seeing another name and seeing another product, and it didn't mean anything to them. It's just their email archiving. But the fact that we can white label ours is whether we send people to the installable client, whether we send people to the Outlook plugin, whether we send people to the web page, it's LMS everywhere. It's LMS group. It's got our logo on it. If you want to go to your email archiving solution, where do you go? You go to archive.lms.group.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So we're instantly sending people kind of back into our system. And again, when people talk about it, because people have weird conversations down the pub, right? Even when they're socially distancing, you have a few drinks and it's like, oh, what do you guys use at work for email archiving? Oh, we use LMS group. They don't know anything else. They can't possibly promote another product. So with Microsoft, you can't do that. With another third party, you might be able to, but some you can't. And with this, yeah, you definitely can. And it just, again, like Luke says, it just makes people more sticky.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you try and do that with as many services as possible. So they're coming to your site, they're using your, everywhere they go, they see your brand. So it's little by little, they just know you as their one point of contact. So I can see there's a bit of chat going on around. It ties into this actually. So I think a lot of people are faced with that decision. Shall I just resell a third party hosted solution? Because I've got to worry about the infrastructure, there's the licensing costs for MailStore and so on. So, Luke, I think you said it was all right to chat about pricing. So maybe you could help a bit there and sort of kind of give your take on, why it makes more sense for you, probably from a commercial perspective, to use SPE and why it works quite well versus maybe a third-party solution, even though you've got that extra work to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So from our point of view, look, completely open book. Our prices for email archiving start at £3.25 per mailbox. Now, depending on the number and volume of users that are adopting that, it's really down to us. And this is what's so flexible about it. We can skin it and sell it however we want. So on a tiered pricing scale up, on a tiered pricing scale down, on a quantity of users. So, depending on a service wrapper that we're offering our clients, we know our base cost, and that is calculated off of our infrastructure, hosting costs, and all of those hidden costs that are in the background. Whereas with a platform that you would go and buy off the peg, your margin and your markup is pretty much fixed. You've not got a lot of headroom. Whereas with SPE, we can say to the client, okay, do you want 1 year archiving? Do you want 5 year archiving? Do you want 10 years? Do you want unlimited? But also from a point of view of how we scale and develop the platform. So at the minute, we've got it hosted in a data center. We're in the middle of actually taking that next step and moving it all into Microsoft Azure. And that's because the way it's grown. So, we know what our costs are going to be with that environment, and it just gives us a lot more flexibility.
But I mean, that probably sounds really scary to a lot of people, but you've got to imagine that when we took this product on, it was a single physical server with a couple of VMs and the storage.
Yeah, that was it. When we took it on, we were running it, in our office behind an FTTC connection in the middle of West Sussex within a, Hyper-V virtual machine. And it was backed up offsite, and there was a very small number of clients on it. But the more it's grown and it's scaled, we've needed to bolster and increase that infrastructure and platform it's sitting on. I was looking at the P&L. So last quarter, our sales on email archiving were just over £11,000. Now, bear in mind that compounds it compounds in two ways. One, new clients and acquisition into the business, but also our clients that add users. One of the really beautiful things about SPE from a commercial perspective versus when you sell MailStore on premise is it's billed per user. So even if a user leaves the business, I give you an example. You're a company and you employ Jane. You pay for Jane's email archiving. All of a sudden, Jane leaves and is replaced by Terry. You still pay for Jane and Terry. Whereas with MailStore on premise, if Jane leaves, Terry takes over that license. So our revenues grow as our clients grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a difference in the licensing model, isn't there? So I know some people, if you've got a user, for example, that leaves on the SPE installation, you may need to recycle that and put that underneath one legacy user, for example, because it is actually based on the archive, isn't it, for SPE? So the archive ties under one user, but you can still do what you're saying. It's slightly different to server, which can cause some confusion, I find sometimes.
Correct, but
the same thing applies.
Yeah, a little bit of extra add there because, so for example, you've got a company with a high turnover and their accounts department starts to look at their IT bill and they see that email archiving was 10, now it's 11, now it's 12, now it's 13, now it's 14, now it's 15, now it's 16. Hold on, we don't have 16 people that work here. We've only got 12 people that work here. They just keep recycling the same two round and round and round, right?
Right.
Then all of a sudden, there's their finance director calls us up and says, oh, what's going on? We're paying for 16 email archives. We've only got 12 employees. Oh yeah, well, it's the extra 4 employees that did exist that now don't. Oh, okay, well, their email addresses don't even exist anymore. They don't even exist on 365. We're not paying for those licenses. They'll never get emailed again. They're an alias of someone else, whatever the situation is. Can we delete those 4 mailboxes, those 4 email archives? Well, yeah, you can, but that kind of detracts from the whole point of archiving. How about, rather than deleting those archives, I'll put in a service ticket to our service board, which is obviously a completely separate contract for monthly reoccurring services. It's just a standard ticket, new user, password reset, whatever, and it falls into that bucket. And if I've got to spend half an hour moving those archives into subfolders of other people, let's just say the MD, so that the emails always exist and they can always search and they can always find everything, it's saved them those 4 licenses month in, month out. So yes, it takes it off of our bottom line. It also saves them money. They also save all the data, but we've also taken half an hour of my time, say 100 quid, out of their retainer for services rendered for me to perform the action to do all that work in the first place. So
I've not heard of it handled that way, actually. That's really good. That does work out nicely, doesn't it? That ties quite well into the question around what's involved in managing this. So how have you found it in terms of the setup initially, the ongoing administration? Obviously you do some of the searching and stuff for your clients, which is great. But in terms of like management and general day-to-day running, how do you guys find it?
It looks after itself. I mean, the key where we're quite clever with it in the sense that all of our clients are on Microsoft 365, and within Microsoft Azure, we set up a dynamic group. So any users that are added to that tenant are automatically put into the email archive group on the basis they're not a resource. So when you go and employ Terry, the guys on the service desk don't need to think, oh, that company have got email archiving, I need to add them into a security group. That automatically happens. So that then self-perpetuates.
So again, there's more to that. There's more to that as well. So with other solutions, you've got to remember to add them as a license. Office 365, you've got to add the right license. In another third-party solution, you've got to remember to tick the box to kind of give them that product. Whereas with this dynamic group, like Luke says, it's the way we've set it up is it pulls through anything that's a mailbox. So that includes shared mailboxes as well. So if it exists as a mailbox, it automatically gets ingested via that dynamic group. So when I'm setting up a new client and Luke says, Chris, they've got MailStore archiving, set them up. I've done it so many times now, and I've got a nice little script and a little how-to, a little walkthrough of all the kind of nuances of, let me remember this bit and let me remember that bit. It takes about 20 minutes now, start to finish, to get 365 to interface with MailStore. We have a separate journaling mailbox that everything goes into and out of, because you can't journal 365 to 365, so you have to have a separate mailbox there.
Yep.
So get that set up, put all the documentation in together, create the instance, tick all the boxes that we do as standard that I don't know if other people do, but again, it's little things like checking 500,000 messages as opposed to a particular size of database. So it just creates that standard across all the customers and makes it more manageable. Create the dynamic group, enroll the users, and then pop it on the instance and then let it run. Depending on how many users, depending on how big the mailbox is, it's about, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's a day. And then after that, like Luke says, it sits there and takes care of itself.
But also within the business, Chris, how many of us now are MailStore certified? Is it 6, 7?
Oh, I think maybe 6. I think if we're lucky, 6.
Yeah.
Maybe definitely 5.
Yeah, I think it was last year, wasn't it? I think you guys went on a bit of a mission to get everyone fully accredited.
Yeah. But even then, although the guys are certified, it's that confidence, I think, with the product, and it's also a time thing. So, like with anything, you'll generally lean on the person that knows the most about the product. So most things kind of cross my desk. I mean, I do have some screenshots that I have taken that I could demo. I could just show now about some of the stuff that we do that others might, that gives us a little bit more value, it makes it a little bit easier for us to manage.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. If you want to do a screen share, I can pop it up on the screen for everyone.
Okay.
I see there's a couple of questions coming around pricing. I think we may have covered that off. SCA Group were talking about pricing in relation to backup. So I guess just factoring the cost of backup in as well. You've obviously done that in when you've done your cost model, and still profitability is good with the backup included, I guess. I hope.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's contained within our backup. So I think we were going through the numbers earlier. Our offsite is like 9 hours, and the onsite is like 19 minutes or something.
Yeah, I haven't got it in front of me, but I mean, put it this way, there's more scope right now in our current infrastructure in the speed of backups than there is storage. So by the time we hit problem A or problem B, it will be within Microsoft Azure anyway.
Yeah. So this is the dynamic group rule that I was talking about. So obviously it contains a little bit of nonsense here. You just fill this in with whatever you want. So if it's a mailbox, basically, and you've got different domains here. So you can have some companies in one 365 tenant that can operate a multitude of different companies outside of that one tenant or different domains. And you want to make sure that you've caught all of them. So you put that little rule in here that if it's this or this, and it contains that. So again, you can be very fuzzy here. And it doesn't contain room because the way 365 works in regards to what is a mailbox, you have to, if it's a room and you can book stuff, it contains data, therefore thinks it's a mailbox. So if it doesn't contain room, and also if you wanted to exclude a particular property, I've just put that in an example. We don't really tend to use that. It's literally, if it's a mailbox, ingest it. So that's an example of the dynamic rule we use, so we don't have to micromanage users starting and leaving. You know, the tech guys can do their things. They can request new users, delete users, and this will just keep running in the background. We also have an example. It's just a name holder, I think, but of the mailboxes import older than 1 year. So that it does the journal, it does the import, and then, for example, it deletes everything older than a year. So a different job to kind of stretch that out.
Okay, yeah.
Again,
yeah, these are some of the things that's great to share, because I'm not sure that everyone's doing it the same way. So it's really good that you're sharing this stuff.
Again, that's the 500,000 messages. I believe this is just an example of, this is all just dummy information, but this is that dynamic rule running and pulling through all the people that existed in the tenant. We've also got some internal stuff here as well. So it's inevitable that there will be errors in jobs, whether that's because of a MIME conversion type, or your connection timing out, or access denied, or MailStore itself doesn't know how to deal with a calendar invite from a Mac bit of software on an EML file.
Yeah, okay.
For example.
Just caught it out, basically.
Yeah. So we have an error checker here. And what it does, I've got some code for that as well that I've modified to show you guys. It will go through every client archive result. So that's every job in our SPE. And we've got, this is our instance, we've got 34, 29 on split out. So it'll go through every single one of those instances. It'll go through every single one of their jobs, of which there will be at least 2, 1 journal, 1 import. And it will report back if there are any errors on that job at all. So of the 34 plus 29 that we have, every Monday morning, I will check this, and it probably takes maybe 15, 20 minutes just to go through the errors. Obviously, I'm not going through the successes. I don't need to know the successes. And the code for that, built internally, looks like that. So it's just interfacing with the system. It's making something look nice. That's the GUI that you just saw. And then it's cycling around every single job, and it's looking for a result that equals fail. And then it's outputting it so that I don't have to go into every instance, and I don't have to go into every job to determine my failures. I can just run that PowerShell script to produce this error checker, and it will tell me, 1 or 2 have failed, for example. The service principal in 365 has a limitation. So every year it expires. So every year you need to create a new service principal. So this is me doing that. We've got into our PSA, we have a ticket template that triggers dependent on when it's due for the client every year, so that 2 days prior to it actually expiring. So on this one, for example, you see here, that's when I created it, that's when it expire. So I would have a ticket template that triggers just at the end of June for me to come in and recreate this service principal to make sure that that service continues to run without any interruption. That probably takes, once I've connected to Azure, chucked in a 2FA code, probably takes about 5 minutes. What else? We've also got the license checker. So this is a new one. So we had an issue with integration and billing, and as a relatively manual process. So 365 with your CSP can pull through into your PSA, your billing platform, and it can tell you exactly how many users you've got, automatically bill them, and make that very manual process very automated. MailStore at present, although we're working on it to automate that whole thing, it's not 100% there. So there is a relatively manual process to actually, how many licenses does this user have? How many do you need to bill for? And again, it's not static. They'll have people come on board, and again, archives will reduce if there's any manual intervention. So we've again internally created a bit of PowerShell that very quickly just chucks up this license count right here, in a matter of seconds, rather than having to determine exactly how many licenses are picked per client. Just run this bit of PowerShell, and it will just cycle through every single client, every single tenant, and tell us exactly how many licenses it's got.
That looks great. These are things that maybe we should have on our knowledge base. I think perhaps I might have to speak to the guys about maybe sharing some of this stuff. It's really useful, isn't it?
I think that is all of it.
What have we got in the question? So what are people asking questions on right now?
So Fluid had mentioned, I think they're struggling to make it work from a commercial perspective. So yeah, generally, basically, it's SPE can be white labeled to 90%. So actually, have you got the interface handy there? You've white labeled at all, Chris? Don't worry if you haven't, but Fluid were asking about the white labeling and also the commercial side of things when you move to Azure.
The commercials in what respect?
Well, I guess the profitability, making it work. There's obviously a sense that we can't make it work because it's going to be, I've got to pay for the licensing and the platform's too expensive, and but I guess it depends on what your platform is, how you've spec'd it up, and obviously what you're charging, of course. So I mean, what you're charging, Luke, for me, that sounds about bang on. I mean, the Microsoft service is what, £2.30?
I think tell you.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's £2.30 per user per month. So that's a 10-year archive, and you're offering a premium service that you're in control of, obviously, and that offers quite a bit more functionality. So, you're making it work at that price level. So maybe it's something we could talk about offline with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, what people have to take into account is, a firm of architects and graphic designers are going to chew through a lot more storage than Janice on reception. So across that spread of mailboxes, your cost of storage can fluctuate, but storage is quite cheap. What you struggle with is compute. So rather than setting jobs to ingest all on one particular time, so your compute is going along and then all of a sudden peaking, you want to make sure it's pretty level. So across ours, we've got, I think there's 3 virtual servers, is there, Chris? Was it 4?
3.
So yeah, 3, one of them acting as the gateway.
Yep.
And yeah, we've got plans to just build that out as we move it from the current location out to Microsoft Azure. But yeah, I mean, look, just take the jump at the end of the day. The other thing to take into account is your profitability grows the more clients you get on and the economies of scale. So yeah, it's one of the best things that we have done in terms of onboarding a product, because as we discussed earlier, it makes your client more sticky, but also makes your client more engaged the more they use and interface with it.
It's also, like you mentioned at the start, it's optional. Look, it is. Bye, Cliff. It is optional, but it's included by default. So it's one of those things that gets picked up when, oh, why have you included this? Why include this? And don't get me wrong, we could include everything we possibly sell as optional items. They come to us for IT support. We don't just provide IT support. Here's all the products and services that we offer out to enable us to do our jobs. The reason we include this one as part of the 365 licenses and kind of email services that we provide is that some people don't question it. When people do question it, it's, oh, what is this? Let me show you. And as soon as you show them that value add, I don't know of any new clients that we've taken on recently, 6 months, a year, that haven't had it.
That was going to be one of my questions, actually, is objection handling. And you just find that the way you present it as an essential service, as part of their service stack, means that there isn't that kind of pushback on it. And if there is, you show them it, and that's sufficient. That's
it. It's there for you to take off of your proposal rather than for you to add. And generally, those that take it off, like we said, at some point, it may be a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, go, Christ, we've got this problem. Well, if you'd had archiving, it would have solved it because of this, this, and this. Like, okay, we'll try it, put it on, and then bam, they're like, Christ, why have we, never done this? Prime example with what I said earlier, this new client that I went to see last week, first thing that MD said was, I've lost all these emails where I was negotiating with landlords. Well, there's the finance director saying, I don't want to spend £198 a month. Well, all of a sudden, I don't know what it was going to save him in, lease negotiations, but I'm damn sure it would have been a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's an easy conversation. Do you go back to existing clients who, obviously when you're onboarding a new client and you can give them that option, maybe it's a slightly easier pitch.
It's something
to existing ones?
Yeah, we've done it recently. So with the shift from Office 365 over to Microsoft 365, we've completely redesigned the way we're pitching, managing, and ultimately selling that as a service to our clients. Mm-hmm. So yeah, as the account management team, along with myself, have actively been going over clients and pushing it. Something that is absolutely key with SPE, by the time you take into the cost of set up a journaling mailbox and everything else, mm-hmm. you find that your smaller clients are less profitable. So you want to target your larger clients first, then move on to your smaller clients.
Is there a particular sweet spot? Are we talking sort of 25 users up, or is there?
No, not really. But your typical SME of 10 and below, they'll take it, great, but the margin on that versus a business of 50, 60, 70, 100 users is significantly different.
Yeah, you're getting economies of scale. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, definitely something to take away from this.
Somebody asked about white labeling.
Yeah, if you don't mind showing that, if that's easy enough. There are some elements. I think there's a MailStore icon somewhere, tiny, which is I think that's in the Outlook add-in, is it?
I've got a couple of examples here. Here we go. So, for example, our landing page here, you're not going to get anything because there's no instance ID or alias URL. But yeah, that's download the client, download the add-in. That's branded. That's branded. That's branded right there. Again, if you do get to an instance, this is branded. And 2 seconds, sorry. Again, this is this is the login to the actual client itself, the fact client on the PC. So, and again, that's branded. So we'll generally tend to push people towards the two methods you can see on screen. So the web page, as the search is the most powerful and functional. People can easily access and interface with a web page. Most people don't want to download something it's not big, but they just don't want it on their computer if they're not going to use it that often. We've got a couple of clients that use it daily, in which case they'll have this. And I think sometimes this looks easier. And then when you're presented with all the functionality within this, it can look a bit scary. But
absolutely.
From a white labeling perspective, they don't see, you can see the little MailStore icon up there, but they don't know that that's MailStore. They don't know that that's anything to do with MailStore. They just see the big fat LMS Group logo, and that is
it's certainly the most obvious branding, isn't it? And in the Outlook add-in as well, if you get any sort of search results, the background there gives you your own branding as well. In the navigation, or the viewing pane, I should say, the preview pane on the right.
Oh yeah,
you don't have to show it, but it's just
even though there are elements of MailStore, I had a internal IT director say, why won't we, we're better off from a costs point of view, just going and getting our own MailStore server. I said, yeah, on the face of it, but when you take into account management, continuity, uptime, backup, actually there are hidden costs there. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, yeah, I get that. All of a sudden we're taking the liability of holding your data for 10 years and the cost of storage. And that's actually a key point to differentiate on. The other thing is, yes, there are elements of MailStore. Of course there are. It's a German powerhouse of email archiving. We're not going to go and develop our own email archiving solution. Why would we? We would take best of breed and best in class and use that as our platform. So it's something that I think personally is advantageous rather than should put people off.
Yeah, and that's certainly what we encourage as well. I mean, we don't encourage you to go out and present it's MailStore, your MailStore UK, and likewise, not that it's totally yours. We ideally powered by MailStore is the approach we want you to take. So there's a kind of a bit of a collaboration there. Listen, guys, this has been amazing. I'm just conscious of the time. Is there any final questions at all? I see SEA, Fluid, and Zen have been having a good chat in the YouTube chat, helping each other out, which is great. So if you've got any final questions, please feel free to chuck them in. I might just to close. Do you guys have any sort of words for someone maybe looking at this afresh now in terms of anything you do differently, or any gotchas, anything to be perhaps where there could be areas for improvement, ways you might approach it if you were to start.
The only thing I think, as we mentioned earlier, when we started out on this, we were a lot smaller as an organization than we are now, and we were running it off a server on site off the back of an FTTC connection, which was great. It worked, but one client was really embedded with it, and the internet connection that it was using went down, and all of a sudden they couldn't access their data. So it was like,
not ideal.
Not ideal. Now with where it's hosted and the high availability and controls that we've got in place, that could never happen again. But at the time, it was a little bit embarrassing. A few hours passed, it was back online, but that was the only thing that would spring to the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, I think everything else we've already covered off. I mean, like the dynamic group, for example, that wasn't straight out of the box. When we figured out how to do that saved us an awful lot of admin, an awful lot of headaches. Again, that internal development over those PowerShell scripts on how to check for the licenses and check for the errors. I mean, it saved a lot of that, a lot of those admin unnecessary waste of time, really.
Not sure that's me, is it? No. Is that one of you guys?
Not me.
Not, no.
Just a rogue,
He's
rogue
in the background, James. Come on, mate.
What's going on?
What I would say to anybody else in the background who is listening, if you do have any other questions that James can't answer, that, you know, what LMS do differently. I mean, Luke, from a sales perspective, I'm sure is happy to help, and me from a tech perspective, again, happy to help. I'm always interested in certainly finding out how other people do it as well, because there's surely people on here as well that can have ideas that we've not thought about, and ways of doing things that might be a lot more efficient or a lot more lucrative.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I know we hooked you guys up with SPE in Germany, who are doing some stuff with ConnectWise, and I think helping each other out is definitely a useful thing. I've got some contacts there, so if you want to just there you go. That's the way to get in touch with.
I was going to say, anyone that has any questions, find us on LinkedIn, message us. We're friendly people. We'll happily help.
Guys, thank you so much for being with us.
James, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
Brilliant. Thanks again. Speak to you soon, and
Take care.
appreciate your time. All right. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.